Hi, folks. Steve Urban here, host of the Riderflex podcast and founder and CEO of our day job recruiting firm, Riderflex. We hope you enjoy this episode. And as a reminder, please subscribe to the podcast for updates and news. Finally, if you haven't already, check out the series of books we've published on hiring, interviewing, and overall career advice titled The Riderflex Guide, available on Amazon. And now, a quick word from our sponsor.
Most homeowners don't have the time or expertise to properly take care of their home, which causes costly issues to arise. That's where Kira Home Maintenance comes in. We're a full-service, routine maintenance company that was developed by a certified home inspector. Each quarter, we service our clients' homes following manufacturer's recommendations to properly maintain all the necessary appliances. We provide the materials and expertise to prolong the life of your property, creating a healthy and efficient environment for your family. From top to bottom, we'll maintain and service your home. To get started, we have a property inspection to determine what needs to be maintained, and a maintenance plan is created based on your preferences. From refrigerator coils to filters, vents, and drains, we do it all, and we do it well. Contact us today for your free routine maintenance inspection, and never worry about your maintenance again.
Andrea Cooper on the Riderflex podcast. Hello, Andrea. How are you?
Good. Hello, Steve. I'm doing really well. Thank you.
Nice to meet you.
Same.
Impressive background. Love your career progress. Your LinkedIn profile is impressive. Congratulations on an awesome career so far. I was really impressed to see everything that you've done, and we'll get into all that. But before the professional stuff, I want to know about Andrea, the person. Give me, where'd you grow up? Parents, siblings? Give us some personal stuff if you don't mind.
Totally. I love that we get to talk about this, by the way, because so often it's not even part of like what we talk about at work, but it's so important to how we show up at work. So anyway, thank you. So let's see. I am from Kentucky, from the central part of Kentucky near like horse country. I'm the second of 5 kids. My parents started very young in high school, as a matter of fact, unexpectedly so, and went on to have 5 children. My mom and 4 siblings are spread out, some still in Kentucky, one in Texas, one in Arkansas. I'm in Madison, Wisconsin. So we're all pretty spread out, but super close. We talk all the time. We text all the time. We try at least a couple times a year to get together with all of our kids and significant others and all that. You might wonder, like, why didn't I mention my dad? So my dad is in Kentucky still, but he struggled with mental illness for many years. So not as like present as a father figure so much, but definitely obviously an important person in my life. And certainly I know we'll talk about what I do in my day job later, but certainly influenced, what kind of brought me to this space of mental health and things we can do.
Were your mom and dad divorced early on? Are they divorced now? Or what was the timeline there?
Gosh, we could go, like, I'll be really high level, but it could be really a long story. So no, my parents were married 21 years. Oh. So from the time my mom was 16 until whatever that is, 37. Okay. My youngest brother was 6.5, I think, at the time. I was 17 when they got divorced. So very long time. We grew up super religious. And part of the kind of undoing of that was my dad actually got excommunicated from our church. And again, this was all before he had this mental illness diagnosis.
This is before that. I see. What faith was this? Do you mind me asking? What faith?
No, I don't mind at all. So no, the Mormon faith, or the Latter-day Saint.
Okay.
So my dad was diagnosed at 40. This really was all of this falling apart that led to him getting diagnosed through placement in a psychiatric hospital. Lost his job, lost his vehicle, like everything fell apart. It was tough.
Lost his wife, lost his job, went into the hospital, got kicked out of the church.
Yeah.
Oof. Oh man, that's okay. That's tough. Is your dad still with us?
He is, but still very much struggling with mental illness and other physical things. So he's around, but he's more physically around, I would say, than emotionally or mentally present.
How's your mom doing?
Thriving. She's great. I have a wonderful stepdad. My mom still works full time. She's adventurous. I mean, she's great. That's the benefit of starting young, I hear, having children, because
Yes.
by the time my mom was, let's see, 48, which is my age, by the way, by the time my
Done.
mom was my age, all her kids were in college or married or out the door. So there's a benefit to that.
There is. I grew up in Oklahoma, and they have kids young there too, quite often.
Yep. Yeah. So I was like almost 30 when I had my first, which is like how old my mom was with her last, her fifth. So it's just funny how that happens. But yeah, so my wife and I have three boys. So we have an 18-year-old, a 15-year-old, and a 10-year-old.
Cool.
Yeah, and we're a blended family. So my ex-partner and I were together when I had my first two boys. So
Right.
she's been present. We've been, like not as a couple for, oh my goodness, many, many years, probably for 15 or 16 years. But she's always been a co-parent.
I see.
So we have a really kind of unique blended family. We tend to do things like big family trips together. My wife and I really believe that kids' experiences like that matter more than any kind of awkwardness or discomfort that might have caused for us early on. And now it's not even a thing. Our youngest son sees my other two sons' other mother as just like an aunt, family member, no confusion, and it works well for us.
Are the two boys that you had with your first relationship, are they adopted from separate families or same? Were they brothers? I'm just curious.
Yeah, no. So that's a great question. So I actually, and if I go too personal, you just tell me. But
I love it. I appreciate you doing it.
yeah, of course. I actually gave birth to all three of my boys
Oh, I see.
using artificial insemination, so
Okay.
through the doctor's office.
Okay. Okay.
And because of that, we used a cryobank. And so it's strange. My oldest and youngest are full siblings, and my middle son is a half sibling. And that is just based on some donor information and some health things that came up and then resolved themselves later on down the road.
How's the third one the half? I don't understand how that works.
No, the middle. So my oldest son, donor, got pregnant, all that.
Okay.
When I went to get pregnant the next time with my middle son, the cryobank informed me that there was some like genetic issues from another woman who had used that donor. So we decided to like use a different donor.
I see.
Which
I
caused.
see.
So then fast forward a few years, my wife now tried to get pregnant, really wanted it to be biologically related. And the first donor was the only available option. So we just decided to try it and chance it. Sadly, her fertility issues did not let her get pregnant. So then I said, okay, that's something I'm pretty good at. Clearly a mother who got pregnant at 15, like fertility is not a particular challenge for me. So anyway, that's why it's kind of unique that my first and my youngest are full siblings. You wouldn't know it. They don't even realize. I mean, they know it, but they don't think like that. It's like they're all just brothers. But it's fascinating as a parent to see, my middle son is a 6-foot redhead, and my oldest is like a 5'6" blonde. It's just fascinating, just the physical differences. And then there are absolutely personality differences that are clear to me, genetically related.
How old are the kids again? How old are they?
So my oldest is 18. He'll be 19 in a few weeks, and then 15, and then 10, almost 11.
Okay. And is the 19-year-old, is that first year college or a senior, or where are they at there?
No, he hated school more than just about anything else in the world. He's a musician. He's very creative. But so he's in the process, fingers crossed, of becoming an electrician apprentice. That's awesome. That's his plan. Yeah.
Okay. Let's just take a pause right here so I could do a whole episode on this, because being in the recruiting space and just watching everything that's going on, I've done lots of episodes on this lately, this topic. I really believe, and we're recording this for the listeners, by the way, on October 17th, 2023. I think trade skills and blue collar jobs are the safe route right now for young people, especially at 18 and 19 years old. I'm just telling you, anybody working on a laptop is in more danger than the electrician or the welder. Guarantee it. The way AI and tech is advancing. Listen to this fascinating interview with Mark Andreessen, who is one of the founders of LinkedIn, was being interviewed by Joe Rogan, and Andreessen was saying he's like, isn't it interesting? 10, 15 years ago, we thought that the physical robots were going to
Yes.
replace the blue collar workers, and the white collar workers were fine. Now it's the white collar workers that are nervous, and the blue collar guys are like, yeah, we're safe.
Fascinating.
So my point is, I think that's a great move on your son's part, because I think we're a long way away from a autonomous physical robot that can do what an electrician does and figure different things out on site. I just think we're way away from that. So anyway, great move on his part. Good move.
Yeah, despite what the Jetsons just like taught me to believe as a kid, just saying, like, where's my robot butler?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So no, I agree with you. I'm proud of him. And the thing that's interesting is like he's very passionate about it being a unionized apprenticeship. And so by doing this, if he gets all the way through the process, it's 4 years, 8,000 hours, and he's paid the whole time. So the time to do it is the exact same amount of time as a college degree, but no debt and making money along the way. So I'm hopeful. I'm excited for him. I think
it's a great move.
Yeah, he's not a sit in front of his desk. I mean, he hated it through 12 years of school. Like, I can't imagine him choosing a career that would require the same. So I think this is
very
good.
Now I want to ask you, let's go back just a tad here. Were you a good kid? Were you straight A student, good kid, church every day? Because you were part of you were Mormon. So were you like straight arrow, or did you venture? Did you like have any rebel in there?
I was pretty straight arrow. I was kind of like predictable in that way. I was in Girl Scouting, which might make you think I'm even more of a straight arrow, but I would tell you that the church I was part of didn't necessarily, they loved the Boy Scouts, but didn't necessarily encourage the Girl Scouts.
Okay.
Girl Scouts is a pretty empowering organization for women and for girls. Okay. So it was really, I'm on a Girl Scout board now. I'm really passionate about like the work that Girl Scouting does. But yeah, I was pretty predictable. I had good grades. I would say if you ask my mom that question, she would say Andrea always was like good grades, made good choices, but she was my most difficult child because she was always opinionated. I was always arguing with my mother, was always challenging and debating. So I didn't break the rules, but I challenged and pushed against them a lot, which made parenting me more difficult. But yeah, I was pretty typical. And, even to, like the thought of being married to a woman would not have occurred to me at that time in my life. Right. Like that was just,
by the way, when did you know, when did you know you were attracted to females and not males? Like when did that happen for you?
Yeah, it's a good question. I have, friends in the LGBTQ community, and they all have like their own answer.
Yeah. I get different every time I ask this question. I get a wide range of answers. Yeah.
There's the when I knew and when I became consciously aware. I mean, like there's the feelings were probably there since teenage years.
Okay.
But the conscious awareness and the conscious like choice of like I can actually live me like the way I want. I was mid-20s.
Mid-20s, because now I'm totally ignorant to the Mormon church rules, so I'm going to ask dumb questions here. I don't mean to sound like an idiot because I don't know all the rules, but is that in today's world, is that cool, or is that like frowned upon, or what happens? I don't even know.
It's generally quite frowned upon. I think
even today.
Well, I think in the last year or so, there's been a shift because of a lot of like pushback. So I think it's getting better. Now, I mean, I haven't been in the Mormon faith for a really long time. I was, like probably since I was a senior in high school.
Did you bail? Did you bail because of that?
No, I bailed because after my dad got excommunicated, the rest of my family kind of was like, okay, we're out. And I continued to go. It's funny, my older sister was married at that point. So she was she stayed in the church the longest. But even she down the road chose to leave. So I think it started to be this like, I had more like self-awareness and more like, when you become like early adulthood, right? I was just like, this doesn't align with who I am. And so no, it wasn't anything to do with the lesbian thing, but certainly would have been a pain point if I had stayed and then had that experience as a member. So
yeah. Curious. Interesting. Okay. So did you know, I mean, I noticed you majored in social work at Kentucky.
Yeah.
What that was driven, I mean, I'm assuming all that was driven from not only who you were becoming as a person, but your dad's challenges. Is that accurate?
I think that's a really fair. And I think between my dad's mental illness and those challenges and my like passion around Girl Scouting and doing things that I had this like feeling of wanting to do something that really had like purpose and meaning.
Okay.
And that felt like a good fit for me. It was a good plan that went awry, like many of my plans.
Did you go to the basketball games at Kentucky? Were you in the?
I did go to some. Those are so fun. I love Kentucky basketball. So fun.
Crazy. Those students, man. Were you like down in the student section, like right there? I mean, man, some of those games, it's like, I don't know how they get all those people in there. You're just squeezed in there.
Yeah, you got to make the most money, right? Like, it's fun.
Did you venture out in college? Did you have a good time? Did you finally party a little bit, or were you still like, no?
No, it wasn't because of the good girl thing. This was more, I worked full time and I went to school full time because I was, like, I don't come from any kind of financial stability. And when my parents got divorced, my mom was like a part-time bank teller, still with 4 kids at home.
How'd you pay for, oh, you just worked through school and took loans out?
I worked in school. I got in school loans.
Okay.
And, a few scholarships here and there. I just kind of pieced it together, really.
Okay.
So I worked, so I didn't get to do some of that like kind of typical college thing. And that's ultimately what led me to drop out of school at that point.
That's right. You went 2 years. Okay.
Yeah, I was working at Walmart full time, going to school full time. I was getting ready to do what they call a practicum in my social work degree. And it was going to require me to volunteer to get those like credit hours. And then I had to go part-time at work. And I'll never forget that conversation with my store manager. I was like, hey, remember, I'm going part-time really soon. Because I was a supervisor role. And I'm like, hey, you've got to find somebody to replace me. And he said, I remember him saying, how much money are you going to make when you're a social worker? And I was like, I don't know, like 16, 17,000 a year. And remember, at this point, I was making like $5.40 an hour, right? So that felt like a good move up. And I'll never forget, he said to me, well, if you went into the management training program, by the time you're done, you'd make $29,500. And I remember calling my mom when I got home, and I was like, because granted, I didn't have a cell phone then, right? Like this was my early 20s, and I didn't have enough money for a cell phone. So I called her when I got home, and I'm like, oh my gosh, can you imagine making $30,000 a year? And I remember her saying, well, I do what you think is best. She said, but just realize that no matter how much you make, you tend to adjust your lifestyle accordingly.
No doubt.
And I'm like, no way, $30,000. Oh my gosh. So I quit school and I became an assistant manager trainee at Walmart.
Did you start out as a cashier? Would you start out like a stocker or a cashier? What was your first?
Yeah, my first job was sales associate. I worked in boys department, like repackaging underwear and stuff. Love it. So
great story.
So I did that for 2 or 3 years. I'm trying to remember now. I thought it was the worst decision of my life at that point, right? Because I'm like 21. I'm an assistant manager. I'm supervising people that are significantly older than me in many cases. So my confidence and my assertiveness lacked a lot. And I was supervising areas like my mom, she would just crack up. She's like, I had like sporting goods, hardware, and like I'm a vegetarian, just as a side note. And I was carrying out like
back then too. Back then.
Yeah, back then, since I was 17, so 30.
Oh, I see. Okay, all right.
Yeah, so like my mom, she's like, you're carrying out muzzle loaders during like muzzle loading season, and like it's just so I was mixing cans of paint, and I had to work overnights, unloading trucks, and I really worried I'd made the worst decision of my life, all for money, which my mom was right per her usual. It's like, well, $30,000 doesn't actually feel like that much now that I have a car payment and a better apartment and all that. But I remember like going to this leadership training class, and I remember watching the trainer. It was really good. It was like one of those like bright spots in 70-hour work weeks that were really hard. Yes. And I'm like, I want that guy's job. I want to be that guy. And so I went to my district manager, and like, it took me about a year, but I navigated my way through. And that's what ultimately how I got into HR was as a regional trainer.
I see. Okay.
I didn't know HR was a thing. Like, I didn't know anything about that kind of stuff. That was completely accidental.
Were you in Kentucky the whole time there, or did they move you around?
Yeah, I was moved around in Kentucky, different parts of Kentucky, and then different stores. And then when I became a trainer, I moved to Asheville, North Carolina, and supported like the region around like Eastern Tennessee, Western North Carolina, a little bit of West Virginia, kind of that part of the world.
And at some point you said, okay, I'm going to go ahead and finish my degree somewhere in there.
Yeah. Oh, so before that, okay. So I was a trainer. Then I decided I want an opportunity in the home office, kind of at Walmart. All roads lead to the home office in Arkansas.
I've been there.
I say, if you're from Oklahoma, you've probably been to Northwest
I've been,
Arkansas.
oh yeah, yeah. I've been to the Walmart office and pitched to buyers. That's another. That was in another life. So yeah, I know the
Yeah,
building.
totally. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to take, it was an HR generalist role that I moved to Arkansas for. I had the most amazing boss. He was my boss as a trainer. And then he moved to this new division, a global division. And that's how I moved to be an HR generalist. And it's because of him, I finished my degree. So there's a university that way ahead of its time, right? This was like in early 2000s before online was a thing. But what I would do is I would go once a week for 4 hours at night. So from like 5 to 9. And then each module was like 5 weeks. So you just kind of intense classes. And that it took me about 1.5 years and I finished my degree.
Now, you finished your degree in 2003. You said your oldest is 18, 19. So right in here, when you were finishing your degree, you had your first child, or it's somewhere close, right?
Yeah, I had finished. And then I might have been pregnant a little bit, but I didn't have him until November of 2004. So I can't remember if it overlapped, but it wasn't significant.
Yeah, but I mean, hey, moving up, getting promoted, having your first child, getting your degree, all right in there. I mean, that's good stuff. How did you like living in Fayetteville?
I actually lived in Bentonville area. So
I mean Bentonville. I meant to say Bentonville. Yeah, Bentonville.
I went to Fayetteville for all the fun stuff, right? So like that's when I moved there is when I actually finally started to have a little fun. Went to the gay bar because there was a gay bar in Fayetteville at that time.
Okay. Cool.
That's when I like started having a little fun before kids. But once I was there,
all right. Were you in a relationship at this point or no?
Yes. Yeah. This was my ex. I was in a relationship with her at this point when we both moved to Arkansas.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Very good. Okay. So you enjoyed your time in Arkansas a little bit. Had a good time.
It was a good experience. And the other thing that was fascinating that I never would have predicted is the job that I went to as an HR generalist was a global job. So I did 2 stints in that global sourcing business, like division of the company, and moved up my career in that time. So I got to travel probably 15 or 16 countries. I just did a tremendous amount of international travel that I would have never even hoped or dreamed for. I absolutely loved.
Good stuff. And you eventually spent almost 6 years at Walmart, I think, right? Is that right?
Oh no, I spent almost 21 years. It was in chunks, right? So sometimes on my LinkedIn profile, it's like,
that's right. I'm sorry.
Look at it
all.
It's like 20 years.
20 years. I wasn't looking at that right. By the way, Senior Director of Global Diversity and Inclusion in 2014. I don't even remember diversity and inclusion being a big conversation in 2014. Is it been? I mean, I know it's hot now, and it's been hot the last couple of years. I don't remember it being like, I don't even know there were positions at 2014 with that title. You were like one of the first ones then. That was early on.
Well, when you work for such a huge company, they often have to design those things before the average, right? Like when you have 1 million employees in the US.
Yeah.
I think they kind of had to be ahead of it. And there are other reasons, I think, from a business point of view that they were on top of it. But it was a great experience. And it was really fun to get to, like, that was my last role at Walmart. So that was really fun, like such a positive way to end my career there.
And why did it end?
Okay, so I was getting ready to turn 40. And I've joked with friends, it's like my midlife work crisis. I haven't had like a midlife like personal crisis, but my work crisis. And I used to go on Wednesdays, I would meet a friend around 4 o'clock. We'd meet outside the home office building, which you'd been to, and we would go for a jog around like the Bentonville Square and kind of, around town. Yeah. And every once in a while she couldn't come. So I would just listen to my own playlist. And as I was starting to have this feeling, I looked up this song. I think, is it Tammy Wynette? It's I might be wrong on who. It's that My Give a Damn's Busted. You know that song?
First of all, I'm impressed that you know who Tammy Wynette is. That's pretty good.
It might not be her though, actually. I might be calling the wrong country, but this song is my give it. It's something about like the chorus is like, I'm trying, I want to care, but now I got nothing. And that's kind of how I was feeling. I was kind of feeling like, okay, I've been here 20 years. I've moved up. I've gotten to do a ton of really awesome work, but I don't want to be like, this is my only job ever. And at some point I'm worried that if I don't leave soon, people will think I can't do anything except Walmart.
Bingo. Yes. Let's take a pause right there for the listeners. This is a good career advice tip. Yeah. Right at 40 years old, been there 20 years. Yes. As a former executive CEO myself, and now recruiter for a living, I would have encouraged, if I were your friend at that point, I would be saying, okay, look, you are reaching a turning point here where you're either going to be stuck or for a long time, and you may never get out of this situation, or you should leave now because you're right there. I definitely agree at 40 years old, because if you would have stayed until you were 50, let's say you would have stayed another 10 years and you're 52 and you tried to get out, oh man, that's a whole different ball game, different ball game, because so many people, we'd like to think that ageism isn't an issue when it comes to hiring, but it is, unfortunately. And so many people that once they reach 50, they have a hard time getting interviews, and so it was a good move for you. My point is,
yeah, I just felt it. And what's fascinating to me when I reflect on it, and because of this podcast, I like sat and really thought about this, like what has that move meant for me? In the 8 years since I left, it's like I learned a ton at Walmart, but I feel like the 8 years has been equal to that 20 years.
Yeah.
And it's just weird to even like, that doesn't make logical sense, but it's truly, I think taking that leap, and I chose to go, the role I left for, what got me to Madison, Wisconsin, was a subsidiary of Amazon called ShopUp. And I'm like, well, I worked for Walmart, I'm going to go work for Amazon. I got this. I didn't have it. It was really hard. It was like completely jarring from a cultural perspective.
Oh yeah, I'm sure.
I really didn't go into it well informed. I went into it with like very unrealistic positive expectations. But I'm also super grateful for it, right? Like I was there 15 months, and the last 6 months was really hard. And I remember talking to my wife and trying to figure out, like, I've moved our family here, our kids are settled here, what do we do? My wife is a therapist, so she can, really find a job just about anywhere. She's like those trade jobs, right? I think therapist jobs are similar in that there's going to be a demand and you can't replace that with AI. Yeah. But I was like the kind of the main earner. And so it's like, what am I going to do? And I lucked out. I had made a really great friend who's a serial entrepreneur, and he's like, just go work for yourself. And he still will joke today about like my face just went completely just like pale, like, what? There's no job security in there. He's like, why do you think you have job security? Because you work for
exactly. Exactly. Bingo.
Yeah. So I did it. And it was so hard for about 3 years. I think 3.5 years. I hustled and, got clients, and all that Walmart experience was tremendously helpful in being able to do lots of different HR things. But it got me exposure. It got me exposure to like small companies, startup companies.
Which you needed.
I needed it.
That was good experience.
My gosh, I needed it.
Yes.
It was like that overused term of drinking from a fire hose. It was like that in this like software startup space. And I loved it. I hated the hustle for money. Let me just be clear. I hate like negotiating to make people pay me for certain projects. Yes. But I loved the experience, and I got this confidence, right? In like, I can figure this out. I can figure this out. They've paid me to do this. They've signed this agreement with me. I got this. I'm going to go solve for this. And I didn't have that before. I would have reached out to the right person in the right department. And, I would have never, but, it was different.
Yeah, great move again, because now you have small company experience, entrepreneurial experience. And it's a totally different world. Small business owners, entrepreneurial life, from where you came from Walmart, that's like Mars compared to Earth. I mean, it's like, it's just a total different world. By the way, I don't know what the exact stat on this is, but I know rarely do people stay very long in the next job right after they've left a long-term job. It is super rare. Most of the time, it's like 6 months, year and a half. If they've been somewhere for 20 years, the shock to the system, it's just very difficult for most human beings to get past that. I mean, you can look at LinkedIn profiles all day long, and if somebody's been somewhere for 10 or 20 years, the very next job, it's short stay. It's just such a jolt of change. And it takes a while. It takes a while to be like, okay, man, this is a different life. This is a different world. And then you kind of settle in, as you move along. So I'm not surprised that the next one didn't last very long. So now's a good time. Let's move into talk space. By the way, for the listeners, It is talkspace.com. Talkspace.com is the website. Andrea Cooper is also on LinkedIn with a bunch of followers. I'm sure she's probably picky about who she connects with, but if you want to connect with her there, you can find her. And she's based in Madison, Wisconsin. I'm sure there's a million Andrea Coopers on LinkedIn, but if you search in Madison, Wisconsin, that's where you'll find her. So how did Talkspace happen? Walk us through how you got there and how that came to be.
Yeah. So really quick, I left consulting, consulting, and you've probably experienced this in your career with the work you do. I met some folks from a company here locally that I'm like, and there was an opportunity with them. So this kind of consulting led to this full-time opportunity. So I worked at an insurance and financial services company based here in Madison, a company called True Stage. And that I did that for about 4 years. And that was, it's funny to hear what you said is so true about that shift. This was like a foray back into kind of corporate space,
Okay.
but in a different way. It was like 4,000 employees, so not like 2 million, so it was like kind of this mid-sized company model.
Mid-size, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it was great because it was, I would say I left that Amazon job feeling very low. I got back to a better place as a consultant, but I'm going to be really honest. It's hard, trying to make sure you have enough projects and,
Totally.
clients, and I've got kids in elementary and middle school, and it was just overwhelming. So to have a little bit more of like regular paycheck and like a leadership, I think that's probably beyond the like basics of money stuff. What really made me want to go back to a company is I missed people leadership. I love it so much. I love leading teams. It's like so satisfying and just fun. So
yeah, and when you're consulting, you're like a lone ranger out there. I mean, you're just kind of all by yourself. It can be very lonely. And I didn't mean to cut you off there, but the other thing I wanted to say to the listeners, most consultants quit doing that because chasing the next gig while doing the current gig is very difficult. It's hard to be like, okay, I'm going to be the tactical doer in this project, but somehow I got to spend a few hours over here chasing down leads for my next gig when this one's over. That wears people out. Most people are just like, I just cannot do both of those. That's very hard. And that's usually why people stop doing it. So
you totally get it. Like, well said. Yeah. I mean, that's exactly it.
Very hard.
I think someday I'd love to go back and do it again in a different way, right? I learned some like things that went well, but I think I felt ready to get back into a place where I could work with a team. And, I'm pretty extroverted and like I thrive off of like the idea of working with others. And I really miss that. So anyway, okay. So I was at that job and I felt like, okay, I've probably said, a number of things here were like by accident or dropping out of college, whatever. Like what I found over the years is I loved human resources. It felt like the closest thing to that meaning I was looking for as a college student in a corporate work environment. So I've been really thinking about like, I really feel like I want to make a plan to be a CHRO. Like I hadn't always been planful in like, what's the next role? I don't try to be too title oriented, but there was something about the role of like being responsible for the full HR, like strategy and implementation that just really appealed to me. So when this opportunity came, it felt like I don't want to sound like hokey, but like, it just felt like perfect. It felt like, here's my personal values. Here's me trying to like shake off my corporate suit for the last 8 years. And here's an opportunity to be in a place that's not startup, but feels like startup and is completely dedicated to helping support mental health and giving access to therapy.
I mean, it fits you perfectly. I mean, your history, your family, your education, your jobs. I mean, it's like, if I was a recruiter and I knew Talkspace was looking for this person, I would be like, right here, Andrea, she's perfect for it. I mean, that's
how it felt. I'm like, this is the job I've been wanting. Like, and I didn't even know it, until that's an opportunity.
Did a recruiter reach out? Was it a friend?
Yeah.
What was it? Okay.
It was a recruiter. Yeah.
Okay.
And I think to your point, on LinkedIn, I think I have found LinkedIn to be very helpful in that way over the years, right? Just to be open to connections, totally. Just to be open to conversations. Even if it's not right for me, I might know someone in my network. I really, like just applying for a job and getting it are so like, I just think it's a lie, right? Like that's not really how it works. So I think anything I can do to like help more people connect with each other. And in this case, it benefited me that I had a contact that knew of this opportunity.
And they hired you in as a senior VP of HR, but then quickly they're like, "No, never mind. You're head of all of it."
Yeah,
How'd that?
it was a big time of transition with Talkspace. We had an interim, our board president was our interim CEO at that time.
Okay.
There was a lot of transition since then. We have, it was basically the same time. 3 months after I joined, I think, is when we got our current CEO.
Okay.
So we got a permanent CEO and really did a little bit of org work that caused that change.
Wow, that's a lot of, okay. So brand new. So we had a new captain right away in the CEO spot and brand new head of HR.
Yeah.
Right away. Wow. Yeah, that's some major changes for the organization for sure. Right.
Definitely. And I wasn't the only new executive. We had a new chief marketing officer, a new leader for a clinical organization. So we had a number of changes at that time. And it's really cool now, like a little bit more than a year later, to like see it come together in a way that is just, to me, it's just a beautiful thing, right? When you can see like a team of people start to gel. And it doesn't mean that we're perfect and that we're not constantly trying to be better, but it's like there's this ability to kind of all be aligned on the same mission.
Yes.
It's really
Which
fun.
you helped set up. How big is the company now? How many employees?
We have about a little over 400 total employees.
400.
And then we have over 5,000 therapists, because most of our therapists are independent contractors.
That's what I figured.
And we have about 220 that are employee therapists, that are our W-2 employees.
Okay. Is there an office in Madison, or is everybody remote? What's the scoop?
No, we actually headquartered in Manhattan. So we're in New York City. I'm there about once a month. And there's a lot worse places to have to travel, like
sure.
direct from Madison to LaGuardia, easy peasy.
Yeah.
But what I love about our company is, so our CEO is in New York. We have, of the executive team, I think 3 are in the New York, but we have like Indianapolis, Kansas City, San Francisco, Phoenix. So our executive team is scattered across the US, and we really are committed to being, a virtual organization. And we intentionally do come together, right? Like we as a leadership team feel like there's a lot of value in like in person, but on the day-to-day, we're all very much working remote together.
Yeah. And all your contractors, all your therapists are all remote.
They're everywhere.
They're everywhere.
Totally.
Yeah. So that, yeah.
And my team, my HR team, right? So I have the recruiting side of the business, and, we do the clinical recruiting as well as like the corporate recruiting. And then the people operations part of it, they're everywhere, like my team's all over. And I love that. I love that experience. I think that's one of the things I'm grateful for Walmart, because I led global teams many, many years ago. I got very comfortable with this idea that I don't have to see somebody to know they're doing good work.
Yeah.
I don't have to sit with them. And so for me, it's like, I love it.
I'm way past that. I ran a couple of $40 million companies as a CEO before I started Riderflex. And now with our contract recruiters on our team, I used to be a very suffocating, demanding boss, but I have just matured and gotten older. And now I'm like, look, I just tell them, I'm like, look, here's the deal. Just make sure the client's happy and fill the position. I'm not gonna call you and ask you how many emails you sent today. I'm not gonna if you're making my client happy and you're filling the positions, I'm going to give you more assignments. So to your point, the body of work, I'm not tracking your minutes, how many times you're moving the mouse. It's just like, if I feel like your body of work is matching what we're paying you, that's all I care about. I'm not going to micromanage the rest.
Amen. And I think, people leaders are all in different stages of that like journey, right? I think some leaders have a harder time than others, but I think that
they do. Yeah, for sure.
The last few years have forced this topic, I think, for people to have to come to terms with it.
Yeah, no doubt.
To be selective about, like, there is value to being together with people in real life.
Sure.
So like, what is that? Where do you find that value? And that value is not found in all the things you're describing, right? Well, who's sitting at their desk and what time did you get in and what time did you leave? None of that matters.
No.
It never did.
No, it never did. Give us the Talkspace overview real quick, just so everybody knows what you guys do and what you provide. Go for it.
Yeah, totally. So Talkspace is an online mental health company. We provide therapy. And really, our mission is to expand access and make it available for people to have access to therapy. Something that makes us, I think, we're fully virtual, right? So we do not have any brick and mortar offices. Our therapists meet with the clients in different ways, right? So we offer different programs or different options, like live video, which a lot of people, obviously this world of Zoom, we've all kind of gotten adjusted to.
Yep.
Something that I think makes us especially unique is our asynchronous therapy. So our ability to provide texting therapy with a licensed clinician. You can send audio messages and text messages, and you'll get responses. It's not that you have to wait like for your appointment to be able to have communication with your therapist. So I think one of the things that my middle son actually chose the texting only option, because we have different packages, right? So he chose texting only, and he's like, I don't need to talk to someone. I just want to text them. And
sounds like a Gen Z.
Totally. Absolutely. but at the same time, think about it, and I'm not going to be nosy and ask you if you've done therapy, but I have. And there's times that you're in a moment, right, of anxiety or worry or trying to process something. And that moment passes before your appointment. And so in this beautiful moment, you can message your therapist and share like a big aha or ask for guidance. There's such value in it. So it's really, we do research as well. So we do like evidence-based research. So honestly, asynchronous and live video, really the evidence shows that they're pretty much equally effective at therapeutic outcomes.
What percentage of your, do you call them customers, clients, the patients?
Members.
Okay. What percentage do video versus phone call versus text? Do you know?
I don't know off the top of my head, but I'm going to follow up and find that. A lot of them do a blend, right? So they may do like a live video session a week, and then they'll do texting throughout the week.
I see.
So I think my son, to your point, might be a little bit more of an outlier or more generationally aligned with just texting. But I would say a lot of our members are really taking advantage of the option to have video sessions, as well as, maybe you're in the car and you had this thought or this, something you want to talk about in your appointment. To be able to send an audio message to your therapist on the app is really powerful. So being able to have that, the different modalities, I think, is what makes us special for our members.
I would think, I'm not a doctor or a psychiatrist, but I would think that if I was having a session, so to speak, I'd want to see the patient's face, right? I'd want to see their facial expressions. I think, wouldn't I? I don't know.
I think that's the beauty of like diverse approaches, right? I think it depends. Like my son is more likely to be open in writing than he would be in person. If you saw his face, he's going to look very stoic, and he's going to be very quiet and single, like one syllable responses. But if you were texting with him, you're going to get a lot more out of him. So I think it probably depends. You saying psychiatrists, the other thing that we have that I think is really great is we have a provider network. So we have prescribers that, let's say that I'm going to my therapist and they're concerned I have maybe depression or anxiety. They can refer me to one of our prescribers to help if there's a need for medication to also be part of kind of my therapy experience. So making it kind of like a one-stop shop is something, if you've ever had to go look for that, it can be time consuming. You have to wait sometimes months for appointment availability. To be able to really quickly, and I would say that's the last thing. I know that you don't want me to talk about Talkspace all day, but what I love is the matching algorithm that we have, in that you answer some basic questions about, as a member, and then it will provide you options of who you've been matched with, who has availability. And so you can be scheduling an appointment that day for the next couple days. Like, the ability to really quickly get connected to a therapist it's a game changer for people who need therapy.
Yeah, no doubt. What if I don't like my therapist? What going to be? Yeah, I don't like her.
You can totally say that. You can say that, and you can switch. You can, and again, if you went to like the effort of like going through, and finding a therapist locally, maybe it takes you a couple months to get in, and then you don't like them, then you have to kind of start all over again, right?
Yeah,
so
very
for
handy.
us, it's definitely possible to change, and we accept many insurance. We partner with providers, so in many cases, you may just have a copay, just like you would if you went to somebody locally. So we try to make it, again, it's access. This idea of helping people heal and having access is just something that we really believe in.
Is the cost on average comparable to others, your competition? Are you average price? Are you okay?
We started as a more of a consumer-based product, and we still absolutely have that offering where if you just want to go pay, I think on average, I don't want to quote it because I can't remember, but if you want to go pay like a monthly subscription to have access, you can do that. But what we're seeing is a big shift to going through providers. So in our sign-up process, it asks you to find out, it asks you information so it knows if you have coverage. And so then it can be able to tell you, oh, you've got a $25 copay or you've got a $20 copay. So you kind of know going into it whether it is going to be covered through your insurance.
And what about this question? Now, I don't want you to bring up competitors, but there are other people doing this. There's other companies doing this. What makes Talkspace different or unique or, compared to what others are doing?
Yeah, I think in my mind, my opinion, there's a couple things. I think it's that our commitment to like quality licensed therapists, right? So really we're not, it's not a ding on anybody who's doing coaches or anything like that, but really we are working with those that are licensed practitioners.
Okay.
With, experience and expertise. I think that like the different modalities of being able to engage, whether it's text, audio message, video message, I think that flexibility and the quick matching based on your needs. I think those are things that really make it a really good experience for our members.
What's the most common type of patient? Depression?
Depression.
Yeah, I'm just curious.
I actually spoke at a women's conference recently, so I don't have like our overall most common, but I think I can answer it in this way. So what we find is that, the majority, not like vast majority, but the majority of our members are women.
Okay. Is that because men are too macho to go to a session?
There's probably more of a stigma for men still than women. But it wasn't like a vast majority, right? It wasn't like overwhelming, but it was definitely the majority are women. And so within that space, to your question, the kind of top two diagnoses were anxiety and depression. And then, there's others that follow very close behind, like, work stress, like maybe trauma and things like that. But really the top two most common were depression and anxiety. And if you think like post-pandemic, anxiety has become so much more of a concern. In the last
what about real mental illness like bipolar people and things like that?
Well, I think that in some cases, those that are more, sometimes you need inpatient, sometimes you need in person. So we absolutely are responsible about making sure that we can provide the right resources and support. So if it's not a client that we feel like we could help, we would certainly refer them. We wouldn't take on, but yeah, I think it would depend, right? So going back to my dad, where we started, he's bipolar. But he refuses to take medication. He refuses therapy.
They all do. Right? I don't know a bipolar person that wants to take their medication for long periods of time. I've never met one. They all take it for short periods of time and then they stop. Every one of them.
So I think if you had someone who was willing to engage in that way, then probably we could, provide good support for them. But if it's someone like my dad, I don't think there would be a lot of benefit for something that doesn't have more compliance in those types of things.
My first wife is bipolar, and so I lived it. Yeah, it was a complete nightmare. But that's another podcast.
That's another conversation for another day.
Yeah, another podcast. Very good. I love the fact that you can get in quick and you can match people. You can switch your caregiver if you want to, or switch your psychiatrist. Yep. You can text quickly. You can now when you text or call, it's not scheduled. So what is it? Does it hit the psychiatrist's cell phone and they text back? How does that work?
Yeah. So it's all through our app. And and so think of it as like a virtual therapy room that you have. You have, excuse me, a Steve room, right, with your therapist. So those messages and that communication all happen in that room. And so our therapists know that in addition to their live video sessions, that they engage in the other communications that come into those therapy rooms to provide the therapy in that way. So that's part of kind of how they manage their role.
Do you have a special group for CEOs? Because most CEOs are secretly lonely and stressed because they for all the reasons you already know, right? It's a super lonely job, right? They can't talk to their teams about everything. Usually their spouses are supportive but can't truly relate to everything. It's a lonely little tiny island. Do you have a special group?
We don't have a special group for CEOs, but we do focus on teens. That's an area of focus for us.
Good.
So we definitely have areas of specialization. And our therapists, to your point, are able to share in their profile their specialization, their expertise. So you may have some that specialize in LGBTQ population. So certainly I think you could probably find a therapist who had worked with executives and worked with senior leaders and who could push
Okay.
back appropriately and provide the support that they actually need versus, being intimidated by their role. So I
This
think
is
that's the value of 5,000 therapists, right? Like you can find different
Oh,
skills.
no doubt. Yeah, no doubt. I have a couple more questions. I know we're almost out of time, but I want to hit you with a couple more here really quick. The teens, you brought that up. This is such a big topic. We could probably talk for 30 minutes on that. Social media,
Yeah.
Andrea, and teens. Don't you feel like social media is just, I think there's a lot of great things about social media, but my personal opinion is like, if I had to rate social media's impact on society overall, I think overall it leans more on the negative impact, especially to young folks. There's some good things about it, but boy, a lot of it, I think, is causing young people to, more than me, but it feels like it's causing young people to be depressed or have anxiety, primarily because they don't think they're good enough, or they don't,
They're
they see,
comparing constantly,
they're
right?
comparing constantly. They see all these, what they think is a perfect person and the perfect life and the whatever. And then they're like, oh my God, how come my life's not like that? Anyway, I'm ranting for a second, but don't you think social media is a huge factor with some of these young folks?
I absolutely do. And, one of the tools we have is called Talkspace Self-Guided. And so sometimes people aren't ready to engage in therapy, right? Like with a direct clinician. And so we have some self-guided things that include like group sessions. They can kind of think of like a webinar, like a therapeutic webinar. We also have journaling. So like it's prompts. And one of the areas is exactly what you're saying, like social media addiction and like, how do you, so I totally agree with you. And I think that it's hard because there are so many good things, right? When you think about like the way I grew up and like the lack of awareness I had about the world around me is really sad to me. And so that's a beautiful thing, I think, but there is so much negativity in it as well. So, and so much like false information.
The meanness, the falseness. I mean, you're right.
There's a lot of thing. I don't have a great answer other than I think we're trying to acknowledge that and provide the support that we think teens could use. To help like acknowledge it. Cause I think that, I think some of them know, but it's also still like, they're just, like, here's my phone, constantly.
We have a big time rule. When my wife and I go to dinner, no phones. Like the phones, we don't, as soon as we walk into the restaurant, nope, phones stay in the pocket. And then I'll be at a restaurant. You ever see a couple at a restaurant and they're having dinner and they're just like staring at their phones and not even talking to each other? I just want to go over and say, like, what are you doing? Like, this is your dinner night.
Like, we're texting each other.
What are you doing? I don't get that. Like, get off your phone. Okay, I know. One last question. I wanted to ask you about this one. It's kind of switching gears. I want to ask you this from a recruiter perspective, from a recruiting perspective. This is a topic that comes up often with my recruiters and the clients. So diversity, equity, and inclusion, it's in that space. What is your advice to hiring managers and or recruiters or both that have a diversity goal or something they're trying to reach? How do they get to their goal without discriminating against certain groups? Let me give you a real life example. So we get this all the time from clients, when they call us to do, they'll say, okay, I want an African-American female for this job or whatever. And that's our goal. We'd really like to have that. And then, of course, our conversation as a recruiter is, I'm like, okay, so you want us to automatically discriminate against all the white males? Is that what you're saying? Educate the audience here on how you can strive towards these goals without automatically discriminating against certain groups.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I think it's a really complex one, right? Like, I think there's not like most complex things, there's not like a simple, oh, just do this.
I know, right? I wish.
But what I've seen is that there's a couple steps in the process that could make all the difference. So one of the things is like, if you think about it in terms of like sales or CRMs, right? You think about your funnel, right? So you've got all these potential clients in a funnel and you're trying to narrow them down to like the ones you actually do business with. I think similarly in the recruiting space, right? If your funnel is diverse to start with, you're starting in a better place. So I think that like that's such an important like key thing. And that's easier said than done, because most of us, when we go into LinkedIn and we look at our networks, we see a lot of people that look like us.
Sure.
So I think one of the first things, if you back it up a couple steps, is like, how do you build diverse networks so that it's not fakey fake? It's not like, go find me this, check the box diversity characteristics. It's like, I want some really great talent, and I want to make sure that it's a diverse pool of talent. And
there we go. I like that language. Diverse pool. I like that.
Yeah, I'm a big believer in that. Yeah. So I think it's the pool, like at the top of the funnel, that really, that's like one really big step. The other thing I've seen, and this is where those concepts of like unconscious bias and, like unintended discrimination come out, is as you kind of go down to the different like interview, like you do the candidate reviews, right? The resume reviews, and you do the pre-screens and all that. What I've seen in some cases is that you could start with, I'm making this up, 30% diverse candidates in the funnel. You end up with very like single digits, because they've gotten kicked out of the process in different steps. And so what it makes you do is go and look and say, do my minimum qualifications, are they actually legit? Right? So if you look at people of color, they often haven't had the same experiences for educational opportunities, for the same universities. So if you really focus on like education and an equivalent experience, then a lot of times you can bring in a more diverse pool of talent.
Okay, good one.
You know what I'm saying? So it's not like, I'm not just looking for the Ivy Leaguers who did this and that. Those are great, but like, that's not all you want. So I think it's like, how do you review to make sure you have fair expectations, you have a diverse pool, and then your interviewers, right? How do you help them understand how they get to the information needed, right? That isn't just hiring people that look like themselves, that have the same types of experience. And ultimately, if you do all those things and you end up with a white male, then you've hired the best person for the job, in my opinion, because that person presumably hit all those steps along the way as part of that diverse pool of talent. I think what happens is you see people fall out for not legitimate reasons, right? Like it's, so I think there's, if you build in a little bit more inclusivity in the process, then what I would tell a client is you would commit to having a very diverse pool of talent.
Very good. Very good. I think that's a great answer. Pretty solid answer. We could, by the way, you could come back on the show. We could do a whole podcast on that topic. Good answer. Andrea, thank you very much for sharing your story, telling us about Talkspace. Congratulations on your career, your family. Sounds like things are going very well, and I'm happy for you. Very glad to know you. Thank you. I appreciate this opportunity. It's super fun. I could keep talking to you for the next 2 hours, but we both have other meetings, I'm sure, waiting on us.